staying with us. This is Daybreak, and the hashtag on X is Citizen Daybreak. The SMS code is 22422 at Citizen TV Kenya and at Ayub Abdikari. Dr. Ekuru Aukot is with us in studio in his company, Abukar Abdirahman and Jared Okello, the lawmaker representing Nyando constituency. I'll come to you, Jared. But Abukar, the point here is then many Kenyans see this union as a betrayal to the constitution, and ideally one that still is on the periphery in terms of meeting their needs, social, political, and economical. Looking forward into 2027, given the changes in our demography, are we seeing a gradual phasing out of the old folks here and Kenya being on the cusp of transformation by the next polls?
Well, time will tell, but that is likely to happen. For example, what I will say is, even in my county, I'm a governor aspirant, Mandera County, 2027. And we hope to bring new changes, new faces, people who have new ideas, not recycling the old. So to the extent that, it's likely that we may be able to see, what you just described in terms of seeing new faces, new changes. And I think Kenya needs that. Because I think recycling the same people, the same ideas doesn't get us anywhere. We need people with fresh ideas. Take, for example, you see in the papers today 123 missing grade 9 students. Where are those students? These are our children. So if you look at these other countries, they have programs like gifted programs, whereby you identify kids at a very early age, and those are the kids. When you have those kind of programs, those are the kids that have made America develop. They identify those kids at an early age, put them through a rigorous, process, system, because the normal system doesn't work for those kind of kids. They're ahead of everybody, they're highly gifted, and those are the ones who bring research, development, technological advancements, and those are the ones that take the country to the next level. So you ask yourself, where are 123,000 kids? Those are the kind of changes that we need to bring, and we need new ideas, new fresh crop of leadership that can actually think about those things, bring the country take the country to the next level.
Is that a general feeling you have of Kenya, given what we witnessed in 2024?
Yes, that's a general feeling I have about the country. We need a lot of. So there are a lot of things that are happening, for example, like this e-procurement system. That is a good thing that we need to embrace. And I know there's a lot of opposition from the county, the governments, partly because I think there was a pilot program that didn't necessarily go very well. But with every new system, every time you are implementing a new system, for the first 2-3 years, you're likely to see some hurdles, some challenges. But that's the right way to go. It creates efficiency. It deals with corruption issues. It's very important with strategic developments like data analytics, efficiency, creating relations, supply chain management, and all that stuff. So, and the next step is probably e-invoicing, whereby we don't have to be running after invoices. We create a platform, on the cloud that's able to do invoicing, online. So those are the kind of things that we need. And I think those kind of fresh ideas will come with new faces, with fresh faces. And I hope to see that in 2027.
Yes, Honorable Jared, you had a point.
Yes, my friend here, Honorable Ekuru Aukot.
Well, just call me Ekuru. I'm not elected, so
doctor.
I'm not
doctor. Doctor.
I don't want to claim a title that I don't.
Dr. Ekuru Aukot suffers what we call selective amnesia disorder. When I did say that the country was at the brink of precipice, I was personally in Parliament. And by the way, he's quickly forgetting that until Honorable Raila Odinga shook hands with President Ruto, we were on the other side, and we could see the country collapsing literally on our faces. The young people literally breached Parliament.
Why did they breach Parliament in your view?
I'm trying to qualify why I'm saying we were at the brink of precipice. Of course, you know that there was an impending finance bill which was being debated and was due for passage in Parliament the same day. So when they brought down a fortified gate and made their way into Parliament, searching for members of Parliament either to punish or to kill, that to me is a brink of precipice. And
so
remember,
you say you voted no.
I voted no.
You voted no.
I voted.
And they were calling for either those who, for you guys to vote that finance bill down because of the punitive tax proposals.
Correct.
And what was and you were in the tunnel.
I was
campaigning for safety.
I was in Parliament.
So
yes.
so why then did your colleagues, your party's Secretary General Edwin Sifuna and Embakasi East MP Babu Owino, they were in the safe company of the people because their position was clear. Your position as well was clear of the party and you voted no. Why then did you scamper for safety if you did the right thing that the people wanted?
We voted no, and we can be vindicated by the records in Parliament, together with the electronic voting gadgets. You know, we vote electronically. And at some point, we actually demanded for our voices to be heard by votes saying, Honorable Jared Okello, Nyando constituency, I vote no, so that it could go on record. But remember that when they breached Parliament, when somebody breaches Parliament, for example, bringing down a gate, the first thing that comes to you is that they are up to something. You know, they're up to something. Because why would somebody breach a gate when they can still have a safe entry into Parliament? So our quick thinking was that these were thugs coming into Parliament to carry out heinous acts. So that is the first step. And what do you do? And when they come in large numbers, and for certain times, they don't even know who belongs where. So you can easily fall a victim of those thorough beatings.
You have been on this platform for so many times before the voting.
Right.
So what was different with your party Secretary General and your colleague from Embakasi East?
Well, remember...
Because they mingle so easily with the people.
Well, you remember they represent Nairobi.
Yeah.
The senator, the Secretary General is a senator of Nairobi. Yeah. Babu Owino is a member of Parliament from Nairobi. I'm not a member of Parliament from Nairobi. And I believe... Whereas many Kenyans know me, they see me on television, I do not really know whether that is enough to safeguard, you know, or provide safety to my presence in Parliament as at that time. But also remember that on the same day, the President unleashed military officials from the barracks to come and occupy the country, not just Nairobi. And later on, they brought that motion into Parliament so that we could sanitize. Because again, you cannot bring out members of the military on the streets without the approval of Parliament. So things worked the reverse. So they unleashed them on the streets and later on brought it to Parliament too. So I was only trying to qualify how the country almost went on the precipice.
Is that respect for the Constitution, Mheshimiwa?
Breaching Parliament is
no. The deployment
of the Kenya Defence
Force was without.
Yeah, no. That was wrong. That was wrong. We raised it, and at that time, then they called Parliament back to pass that kind of, you know, release of military officials. That was a breach of the Constitution as well. And we say it as much.
At least now you're limiting something.
Let me also say this. Well, you remember, we joined with the president after they shook hands.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, and we did that to stabilize the country. That is why now we can freely talk. Somebody like you would be taken by Subarus out here upon leaving Royal Media House. But we had to bring sanity.
On what grounds?
Well, there were many grounds before we joined. So, but let me say this.
As you finish
let me say this.
Yes, Philip, please finish up.
For the first time in the history of Africa, a president acknowledges the brutality meted on his people by the police. And he goes ahead to say, those victims, even though 2017 he wasn't the president, they must be compensated.
But he called but he called the innocent people of Nyanza region militia.
Who did?
William Ruto, the deputy president then.
Well, that has not stopped him from accepting compensation to go to the people who suffered. So that is why I'm saying this.
But Honorable Jared, why do you, a parliamentarian, it's so disturbing, is it, and appalling when you, a ranking member of the party, ODM party as well, today at the expense of presidential proclamation, bills it or tout its big matter, big issue, when the president says victims should be compensated. Yet there is an entire report called the Truth, Justice and Reconciliation Commission, where more than 40,000 submissions have been made, which documented all the historical injustices since 1963. And you parliamentarians overlook that because the occupant at State House, whoever it is not willing to give it the direction to do so. You have the power to invoke that. Why not also relook back?
Why haven't the victims of Agala massacre, for example,
when we joined President Ruto to help stabilize our nation, what was on the cards then were the victims of police brutality, and we voiced it as much. Remember, the Truth and Justice Commission report, dubbed Ndungu report, was not brought during President Ruto's tenure.
It was during the Jubilee government.
During Kibaki, actually.
During Kibaki's it was tabled in Parliament.
Let's correct this narrative.
Yeah, yes.
Government is in perpetuity. You cannot tell me because a government that was there before and there is already a commission of inquiry where money was expended to establish wrongs done to the people of Kenya that this government cannot now implement it. After all, on the same note, Honorable Gerald, on the same note, Ruto did not initiate all the projects that they are now claiming to implement. Some of them, actually most of the projects, perhaps only Talanta Stadium.
Including the e-procurement.
Exactly. They did not start with him, but he's
on the same. It is true. It is true that governments work in perpetuity. But then it becomes hypocritical that this report was actually manufactured, or rather, the reports were collected and collated during Kibaki's time. So we had Kibaki, we had Uhuru Kenyatta. Not a single voice was directed either from Dr. Ekuru Aukot, who was just an adult then, over the execution of that report. Now that President Ruto has accepted to pay victims of police brutality, and by the way, we have to remember that most of the people who were victims of police brutality were from the Luo Nyanza. So the problem here is that the Luos for the first time are going to be given some compensation, some reparation. So that is the problem that the opposition has. But and I'm saying that, let me tell you before, I'm wondering how a dead Luo and an injured Luo becomes a problem when compensated.
Okay,
so go ahead.
Okay.
Those were not the only victims.
Just hang on. It's not about whataboutism. It's not about the ethnic concerns that communities have. Kenyans' rights have been violated, including those from Luo Nyanza and all parts of this country. The point is then, why are you trading on such flimsy grounds when Parliament, where you sit, is bestowed with the power to relook into all the issues? And power is granted so much that today the president only wills some political power because you hold the cards to even impeach him. Why not to look back at all these things?
And let me repeat this. What was on the cards immediately the union came about was the excesses as exercised by the police, the people who were killed, the people who were maimed. And this sat at the very core of Raila Odinga's considerations in his engagement with the president. And in the president's wisdom, he said, even though I took over office from 2022, I'm not going just to look at those who suffered during this period. I have to extend it further to 2017. I haven't heard the president saying that he's not going to relook at the Ndungu report. I haven't heard that. But I've equally not heard anybody until this show who is now pursuing very vigorously the implementation of the Ndungu report.
It's me who asked. So the question is
that's a very good thing. I think the president is watching. Go to Ndungu report, President Ruto.
And it's because you are a member of parliament representing the people of Nyando, but in the National Member Assembly, therefore, it's pertinent, therefore, to also put you under the spotlight. Yes, Adi.
So Ayub, you know, Kenya is a small democracy. You know, it's growing. We've come a long way. I do agree that, you know, the breach on parliament, it's any kind of violence is not something we condone anywhere. But I think there are issues on all the sides. For sure, the government, was very heavy-handed in handling, those demonstrations. On us citizens, as Kenyan citizens, we have to also understand how democracy works. So, for example, the finance bill, Kenyans had issues with it, and for good reasons. I think, and the Constitution gives us the right to demonstrate, and that is a right that we need to protect with our lives as Kenyans. It's one of the things that helps us hold the government accountable. But what we also need to know, I think, as Kenyans is, the way democracy works also in different ways. We are the people who put Jared, Brother Jared, and the members of parliament in those houses. The way that should work is, if, for example, there's a bill or any kind of bill that is in parliament that is important to us as constituents, and say I, a member of parliament, votes for that bill, and that bill is not in the interest of my constituents should make sure that I don't come back. That's the way it happens in the developed world. So, for example, you will see a member of parliament saying he's not running for office next year because of what he did in parliament. Because he or she knows they're not going to be elected because of their record. So we Kenyans also need to know it's also our responsibility as citizens to hold the parliament accountable. We are their bosses. That's where we don't do very well. Now, in terms of, like what my brother said, in terms of like compensations and all that stuff, it's very sensitive for me to hear, those kind of like things that have been, committed against Kenyans. As a Northern Kenya person, the kind of atrocities that has been committed in that region, and nobody ever talks about it. There has never been any kind of compensations. By the way, I was a witness to Wagala massacre. I was in Wajir High School during that time. I've seen survivors. I know people who died. The school driver died in that incident. My school driver. One or two cooks died in that incident. There were some students who survived. The people who were there for 2 days and survived looked like people who have been, in hospital bed for 20 years, emaciated because of the torture and the kind of hardship that they were put through. There's a Malkamari massacre. You know what happened in Garissa in 1984, the burning of Garissa. This happened even, I think, during, I think it was Uhuru's government, when Garissa was burned down. So these things are...
2007, 2008, post-election violence.
Post-election violence.
There are many reports.
Yes, this happened in Elwak, where, the military was unleashed on innocent citizens because of excursions of, I think, bandits from the other side. And people were clobbered, and I know people who are living with trauma from all of those things to this very date. And we don't talk about compensation for those regions. I lived through the martial laws of the 1980s, 1970s as a young boy. And I know how that feels. So when you talk about those things, it's very sensitive to me, very important to me.
Okay.
And, we haven't had any compensations. We have members of parliaments. And those are things that, I think as members of parliament, independently, we need to look at.
Ayub, there's one thing that I want us to correct here, speaking from a constitutional point of view. When Kenyans decided they are going to invade parliament, I'm not advocating for violence. However, Kenyans were now invoking Article 1 of the Constitution on the sovereign power that vests in the people, and that they can exercise directly or indirectly through their elected representatives. What Kenyans then said, our elected representatives have actually failed us. We are now taking back that sovereign power and authority. And that's why they wanted to go to their house, because the parliamentarians, and like you said, rightfully so, Secretary General Sifuna, Babu Owino interacted very well with the people because they could feel the pulse of the nation. And that's why they were not afraid. And they did not run like Honorable Gerald here took off from. Yeah. Now, the question of compensation, I totally agree, but it should not be discriminative, like my brother Habu Karia said. There are many reports that actually establishes the violation of human rights. So if you're going to go compensation, let's go the full haul. Secondly, compensation without justice and accountability is playing lip service to addressing those atrocities. For example, Ayub, let's use very simple examples that I think fresh in people's minds. Albert Ojwang was killed under police custody. Njoki was killed under police custody. Boniface Karaoke, standing by the wall, just selling masks, was shot. And we all saw that. Who killed Albert Ojwang? Njoki. Who is that cop who actually shot Karaoke? If the president wants us to believe him, and this charade of this commission that he has created, then let's also hold the people who caused those sufferings accountable. Without accountability, this compensation is cosmetic.
So, Ayub, we are not going to allow Dr. Ekuru Aukot to mislead Kenyans here. You cannot say that you are hiding behind sovereignty to allow young people bring down a gate of parliament and have them move in droves into parliament. And you call that exercising sovereignty. You are not
have you not read Article 1 of the Constitution? You are a legislator.
It does not talk about breaching a gate. No. It does not say bring down a gate. You can't glorify violence. When you elected
representatives fail the people, the people now can take over their power. It has happened elsewhere, Bangladesh, and many other countries.
We will not allow you to glorify violence at the altar of perpetuating Article 1 of the Constitution.
I'm not glorifying violence.
Remember the U.S., and I'm glad my friend here lives in the U.S. I've been to Capitol Hill many times. When people breached Capitol and they got into that parliament, people ended up in jail. Up to now, there are people languishing in jail for breaching.
No, but the difference, Honorable Jared, is that they were prompted. Trump gave them the nod. It was with his tacit consent. That is fascism. And he released 1,500, gave them amnesty when he came to power, when they were sentenced. So it's a whole different ballgame. Those are not demonstrators who are against tax proposal or government policies. It's a whole different ballgame, is it?
The bottom line here is you cannot use violence to breach our constitutionally recognized office, much less Parliament of Kenya, one of the three arms of government. And they breached it. Not that they had a petition, because even if you read Article 37 of our Constitution, yes, you can picket, you can demonstrate, you can present petitions to government authorities, and Parliament is one of them. They did not come to do any of those three. They literally brought down at the gates of Parliament. We can't glorify that. I think as a society and as a people who hold our country dearly at heart, we also must practice certain ethos that feed into purity of our elections and purity of our governance. But because just somebody is in opposition, and I've been in opposition, by the way, that is the only politics I understand. But I also know that there are certain excesses.
At least you're radiating now, you're not in opposition.
We are here to help Ruto stabilize the government. So I cannot say...
What is unstable about this government?
So we will not allow certain excesses that would bring down our country. The prayers that Ekuru Aukot and company are having every day is that the government collapses and they take over. But they will have to wait a little longer.
Before I come to Abogo, Honorable Jared,
that's not true.
You said that your party leader has provided the stability in government.
Correct.
Right? Okay. That is under this arrangement with the president. So in the context of the handshake he had with Uhuru Kenyatta, what did he provide?
Same stability.
In the context he had with the Grand Coalition government with Mwai Kibaki, what did he provide?
Same stability.
1997.
How about 1997, Daniel Arap Moi?
Same stability.
Would it be fair if he's labeled the king of handshakes?
The king of stabilizing our nation. Because Raila Odinga, and I've worked very closely with him. I have traveled with him, I have worked with him, we have shared quite a lot in common. He puts our country first. He would rather sacrifice his own personal ambition for the stability of this country. That is the Raila Odinga that many people don't know of. He would go into any length, reach out to his worst critic, just to ensure that our country is one. The unity of our country sits at the core of his each and every consideration. So even if it is about reaching out to Gachagua for the sake of stabilizing this country, Raila Odinga would go into such lengths to do that.
But the Kenyan people view you so differently when politicians come together in that unity aspect. But however...
History will vindicate him one day.
Because you travel with him a lot, did you tell him, or do you mind telling him, that some of the major pledges the president made, his broad-based partner, have not been met, including what the Controller of Budget pointed out in her report in the last financial year, that 25 billion Kenya shillings was blown up in foreign and domestic travel, despite the president pledging to have that by 50%?
Well, the report was actually unleashed yesterday, and I haven't met him since yesterday.
Okay, when you meet him next, will you mind calling?
I will. Well, he already knows because he reads it here.
Yeah.
And you'll make a public pronouncement.
Yes, Abuka.
Yeah, so I think, you know, like some of the differences here is, so for example, in the U.S., the issue that we're discussing about the violence, you know, and people behind bars and all that stuff, some of the differences is that I think in the U.S. system, the technocracy works, you know, you know, like below the politicians. So, for example, the DCIs and you know, the ESGs, all the independent, you know, institutions work very well, efficiently. You know, there are times that there has some influences from politicians, but for the most part, they work. Think about it. Politicians are a passing wind. Some will come, they will cause some mess, they will go. But you know, the institutions stay, and those are the ones that I think as Kenyans we need to really build. We need to fortify them. We need to empower them. Some of them are empowered by the Constitution, but I don't think they are really functioning at that level. So I think to take the country to the next level, we don't have to be relying totally on politicians. We need to find a way to make sure that those independent institutions play their role very well.
There seems to be a similar concept, Abukari, and how do you think then holders of independent offices and the constitutional commissions can survive this? The similarity is that, as is the case in the context of America, where the second coming of Donald Trump appears to be also squeezing certain institutions in America, as it happens in Kenya as well, where you have seen them holding up under enormous pressure, the anathema, the name-calling, and also the demonization of these institutions. However, how can then, in our constitutional architecture, can we provide that much-needed stability for the navigation of the waters?
Yeah, I think, you know, like, for example, the citizens have to stand up for those institutions. You know, those are constitutional bodies. Constitutional bodies serve the citizens, and the citizens need to stand up for them and make sure that that's one thing. The other thing is the opposition. You know, like in our situation today, we don't have a functioning opposition. Those are the ones who should be standing up for those institutions and making sure that they're protected as by the law. So this works very well in the U.S. You know, Donald Trump is a different kind of president. So that's kind of a little unique. But I think for the most part, the institutions work very well. They're well protected. They are also, one other thing that also, you know, I think we are not very strong on is having like, you know, like various sectoral independent bodies or, you know, lobbies that actually lobby the government, lobby, you know, those, making sure that those things are, like, for example, housing. Like during the budget process is one thing that, you know, the citizens don't do very well in this country. During the budget making process, the citizens have to be involved. We need to have like various stakeholders representing housing, you know, representing, you know, health sector, representing the agriculture, representing tourism, and making sure that the budget making process serves the interest of those areas to make sure that the country, you know, moves forward, you know, in those areas.
Yeah. Well, yes, Dr.
Yeah.
So, two quick things. I think I don't want my brother Gerald to run away from this. I know he wants to castigate Kenyans who invaded parliament. But the question is not answering is why did Kenyans felt at that time that we actually have to invade this house? Because this house is betraying us, it's not representing us, it's not legislating people's legislation. So the question of why did Kenyans actually saw it fit? And sometimes, remember, they had even promised to invade the State House, to eject the president from State House. And there was a lot of panic. These are people's revolution. And you cannot characterize people's revolution as violence, because a revolution by the people is as a result of the failure by government. But coming to the independent offices, and Gerald, you will be able to answer that maybe at some point. We can have another debate another time. Coming to the question of independent offices, one of the things that occupants of these offices have really not internalized is the word independence and the mandate that comes with those institutions. The general character of most of these independent offices is that they are subservient or serving the appointing authority. Mm-hmm. And they actually relegate the obligations bestowed upon them. And if you look at, for example, the manner in which recruitment happens, it's politically controlled. And when people now start characterizing and saying, oh, we must balance the regions, you know, put a Turkana, put a Jaluo, put a Somali, and so that becomes like the loyalty. And therefore, it's like a reward system. And that's where independent officers are actually missing the point. Instead of looking at their mandate under the Constitution and to say, we are going to serve the people of Kenya, not the appointing authority. Because the appointing authority is also doing his or her duty to appoint. And if you look at, for example, this Constitution, our 2010 Constitution, it removed a lot of powers from the president. The vetting in Parliament is many times cosmetic. Hardly anybody is rejected. You know, even when, for example, we do interviews. In fact, I can brag here to say that the first most independent recruiting agency was the IEBC selection panel of 2011, where I chaired that panel, and we televised those interviews. You know, and we invited the members of the public, bring memoranda, and we put those questions that Kenyans actually brought to us as committee members to the candidates. And we told them, can you explain this? People have said A, B, C, D about you. And we invoked provisions of Chapter 6, leadership and integrity. We asked people if you have not, do you have a clean bill with the ASCC? Do you have DCI? Have you paid help? You know, are you a member? Are you a good member in good standing with your society if you're a lawyer, if you're an accountant? And we asked those questions openly. But today, all that has been watered down. Why? Parliamentarians here, I'm not saying it's Honorable Gerald.
He's one among them.
Passed a law that actually undermined Chapter 6, leadership and integrity. They passed a law that undermined Article 104 of the Constitution on the recall clause. That actually now makes it almost impossible for Kenyans to actually seek accountability from their representatives. So, you know, we can talk about all these nice rosy things, but I think there is a general failure of governance in our country. Okay. To the extent that, you know, now when, for example, we try to draw parallels with the United States of America, and I'm happy Abubakar is here, you will hardly get away with a crime in the in the United States of America, even if it takes years. You will hardly. Donald Trump has been charged how many times? I think 37 counts counts like that. It doesn't matter whether you are president or not, the system is working, and it's about the integrity of the nation.
Thank you.
Allow me, Ayub, to bring my brother closer home. He's still, you know, juggling between breach of parliament as a constitutional standing or as a form of crime. So he's at pains to do that. But let me bring him closer to Africa.
No, but as you answer that question, Honorable Gerald, as you answer that question, for example, you were the one who brought about America. The people who invaded the capital, they were charged.
Arrested, charged.
Arrested and
sentenced.
Charged. Yes. Now, why aren't our police arresting the people who actually invaded our parliament here? Because that's what we'll see the rule of law applying.
I think some were arrested. But I want you to say this. Yeah. In Africa, during the Arab Springs, what began in Tunisia. In fact, it was very funny that some guy who was always being bothered by askaris, in quotes, those county council people.
Mohamed Bouazizi.
Yes, Bouazizi, who got tired of people who are always asking for their levies. Yet, he was just a hawker and hadn't made much. Yeah. So then he got upset, blew himself, and he died. And that then created what became the Arab Spring. But you remember, even when they were in Egypt, for example, in Tahrir Square, what they could do is just to report at the Tahrir Square, blew all the whistles that they had, just to become a good nuisance in the city. They never broke anything, they never breached any gate, and the president had to succumb to that pressure. But then, when it comes to Kenya, Ekuru Aukot says that it was very much in order to breach parliament and literally chase after members of parliament. How do we allow violence of such magnitude to pervade our political scene? That can never be allowed to take shape.
But you also cherry-picked, Honorable Jared, on the Arab Spring, which was inconclusive in Egypt because of Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, who came in there to hijack the revolution.
Yes.
In a day, 600 Egyptians were killed in Rabaa al-Adawiya, and the world was silent about that. They were simply protesting.
Yes.
Similar case with Kenya here. The Kenya National Human Rights Commission documented the people who were Kenyans who were killed, a majority who were young. I mean, in as much as you are talking about the in defense of parliament, how then do we also get justice for the families of Kenyans who were killed, as documented by the taxpayer-funded Kenya National Commission on Human Rights?
That will have to, we have to step back as a country. But let me take you back a bit to Egypt that you have mentioned. When that Arab Spring took place in Egypt, the military actually took over. So just like President Ruto had allowed the military, I do not know where we were going to end as a nation. Probably we could be having a military regime up to now. Because again, power, they say, is sweet, that whoever holds it, whether it is military or civilian, they seldom want to let it go. So Egypt, with the military rule, you still have the military guy many, many years later. Yes, that military guy has perpetuated lots of atrocities to the Egyptian people, but that they can handle at their level. But they also have to remember that there is ICC, where some of our boys ended up some years back. But President Ruto has begun the process. He's looking at the deaths by way of police brutality. If Kenyans, and this is a constitutional mandate of every Kenyan, invoking Article 37, we can still petition the president to go further and also incorporate the Ndung'u report so that it can also be executed. And finally, we can have peace as a nation. But allow me to say this, yes, please, that even with all the problems and all the ballooning of our issues internally, remember the United Nations is trooping to Kenya. The UNICEF is relocating its headquarters to Nairobi. The UNFPA, the UNICEF fund, is coming to Kenya. The UNOPS, the United Nations Population Service, is coming to Nairobi. All these are moving to Nairobi with all the noises from Ekuru and company, Gachagua, Matiang'i, and Kalonzo, notwithstanding, meaning the world is not listening to them.
Thank you. Point noted, but also not the fact that you have deliberately also overlooked the hospitality and the warm reception of the Kenyan,
of the Kenyan people, yes.
And how hardworking they are, the social capital that they do provide. Yes, we have to give it to the Kenyan people as well. Yes, Abu.
Yeah, so I mean, Brother Ayub, I think, I think as Kenyans, we need to have, I think the challenge is, with all respect to my brother Jared and all those in Parliament, what we need is like real patriotic Kenyans in Parliament who can actually look at the broader good of the country, not just their party interest, their individual interest, or the executive interest or whatever. And I think, to the extent that we can get, a critical mass in Parliament that can actually think about what is good for this country. What is good for Northern Kenya is good for Western Kenya. What is good for Western Kenya is good for Mount Kenya, across the country. We need to look at ourselves as one nation, as one people, and how we can uplift, ourselves as, as a people. I'll give you a good example. The BBI bill, back then, it was pitting one region against another. The members of Parliament, yes, they represent a constituency, but what they need to know is we are Kenyans. We need to make sure that as a country, we develop together. We make sure that, so you will find very few thinking, with that mindset. For example, Northern Kenya has been marginalized for over 50 years. Nothing happens there. There are no tarmac roads there. It all starts in the other parts of Kenya, and it's at the entry point to Northern Kenya. Garissa Bridge, Isiolo. No tarmac roads there. There's only this one in Moyale that was done by the World Bank through the Trans-African Highway. So there are no tarmac roads there. I mean, we pay bill. Those roads are built by, tariffs on fuel and that stuff. We pay those bills, those things, but no roads are there. But we want people, members of parliament who can actually look at Kenyans and say, yes, that region, we need to direct more resources there to ensure we bring it to the same level with other parts of the country.
Okay.
Not just say, whatever.
Yeah.
Equalization fund is one other thing. Mm-hmm. The purpose of equalization fund is to do something like that. Somebody who works in one of our counties told me the first equalization money that went into this county is 800 million last year. Devolution has been here 13 years. Now, there's one other thing that I want to mention. All of these things are symptomatic of underlying issues. And those are the issues I think as Kenyans we need to address. Kenya is a rich country for the most part. There's a lot of resources here, but a lot of resources are being pilfered through corruption. Okay. That is the bottom line. That's the one thing that we need to address. Okay. And there's one or two things that I want to say about corruption. A lot of times when we're dealing with corruption in this country, we're dealing with here and now. We're dealing with enforcement that doesn't work. We have these independent bodies that are mandated to do enforcing, like making sure that from the day I was in University of Nairobi in 1992, from Golden Bank scandal to Anglo leasing to Grand Regency to KEMSA to Eurobond to the COVID billionaires. Sure. Tell me who has been in jail. Okay. But I want to mention this, Ayub, that the enforcement is one thing, but there's one longer term issue that we're not addressing. And I want to focus on solutions. So, for example, here, one of the things that we're not doing as a country is making sure that we focus on our younger kids and making sure that we instill values of integrity, of honesty, social responsibility, good citizenship in them. Our schools don't emphasize those things. Think about it today. Kids are cheating in schools, in exams. And I'm told, school administrators and parents are also involved. Ayub, tell me, what kind of citizens do we expect, what kind of society do we expect from those? And what kind of leaders do those kids who are cheating in schools make? Those are the kind of things that we need to focus on as government for long term. That's the way we can deal with corruption. If we can bring, if we can instill good citizenship in our kids, good values of honesty, integrity, social responsibility, environmental responsibility, those are the people, that's the best way to fight corruption long term. Thank you. And all of these things we're discussing is symptomatic of those issues.
If you look at all the things that my brother Bukar and even Gerald has said, it boils down to one thing, about the leadership of our country. All question about patriotism. Where do I want my country to be as a leader? When I occupy that public office, what is it that I'm doing to make my country better? So that we, for example, from the north, we should no longer be talking about this issue of marginalization. Why isn't infrastructure the same in the northern part of Kenya or other parts of Kenya as it is elsewhere? And this is the reason why we created deliberately the Equalization Fund in Article 204. And I think if the leadership of our country really wanted to build a nation state, because today we are not a nation state, we are just a conglomerate of tribal, people found ourselves in one geographical location called Kenya. But if we wanted to build a nation state, then we must make sure that, for example, in Wajir or Mandera or Turkana, at the farthest corners, Loitoktok and the rest, I can still, as a Kenyan today, emigrate and still live and still enjoy services in that part. Bukari will tell you he can move from one state to the other and he will not miss anything. Everything will be in the US, in Europe, the same thing. That is the kind of vision that we are lacking in the kind of leadership that we have in Kenya today. And for example, if really we wanted to expedite equity, we may not achieve the ideal of equality because that's really an ideal, but equity in this country, if I was president of this country, all I need to do is just pick the Auditor General report. I work with accountants in my line of business. I work with accountants and auditors. And when we read this Auditor General report and the kind of findings the auditor makes, accountants will tell you it will not take me 10 minutes or 20 minutes to take the stand and testify that this governor, this MP stole the money, because the evidence is there. The Auditor General takes about maybe 6 months of auditing, and then even sending those comments and ask them to account. By the time they make the findings, it's a finding that should be able to take somebody to a criminal trial. But what do the members of parliament do? They now convert those findings into comments. They start investigating afresh when the Auditor General already penned down a finding. So it is the members of parliament who should be telling Governor X, MP Y, account for this money. And we should be able to see people actually go to jail. We are not jailing thieves of public money. But if you steal a chicken today or maize, utafungwa. So for me, it's the whole question of governance and leadership that actually is failing. And that's why Gerald is struggling to explain why did Kenyans felt fit to actually invade parliament. Because they are angry. They are annoyed with the leadership. And when people are angry, Honorable Gerald, they will take power into themselves. And I like sometimes to draw parallels, and people think that I make a very unpopular, example.
Yes.
Or Burkina Faso, Ibrahim Traoré. If you look at for example, what Ibrahim Traoré is doing in Burkina Faso, he's done amazing things. He's transformed that country within 2 years. Already paid the national debt. He has flagship projects that are actually now making Burkinabe people very proud of their guy. But here in Kenya, we want to argue the idea of democracy. We hide behind democracy, but actually we keep on persecuting our people. That military guy has not even increased his salary. He drives in a small Land Cruiser, walks the street and people cheer him, and he's doing transformational things for his country. I'm not advocating for coups, but what I'm saying is, if you are a leader, do the right thing for your country, and people will love you.
Yeah, our dispensation is certainly right, is it, Daktari, given that you also midwifed his Katiba. So is our problem a democracy without Democrats then?
It was Professor Okoth Ogendo who once said that constitutions without constitutionalism is, I think I can't remember the phrase, but anyway, he talked about constitutions without constitutionalism. Constitutionalism being the culture, the tradition. But see, you can enact laws. We can write ourselves a good constitution. Like ours is a very, by the way, progressive and developmental constitution. It's actually one of the most cited constitutions in the last, if you look at constitutions in Africa in the last maybe 20, 30 years, Kenya's constitution is very progressive. And I've gone to many countries to speak about how we made our constitution. But constitution is a living document. We must breathe life into the constitution. We must live the ethos and pathos of a constitution, the values of the constitution. For example, if you look at Article 10 of the constitution, it talks about national values and principles of governance. How are we living those national values and principles of governance? So we have to breathe life into our constitution. I mean, you can write yourself the most beautiful constitution, but it may not even be what the paper is written on if people do not enforce it, people do not respect it. Here you have, for example, blood-based government people will say that we have made some progress. You swear under Article 3 to protect, uphold, and respect the Constitution. Yeah? But then you go ahead to give shoot-to-kill orders, violating the entire Chapter 4 Bill of Rights. I mean, do you respect the Constitution at that stage? No. So for me, I go back to the question of how are we as a country being led and governed, especially when people will give responsibilities.
Yes.
So, my brother Ekuru is still trying to flog a dead horse on this matter of breaching parliament. That was criminal, and it will remain criminal forever. It's sad that the Constitution gave birth to Equalization Fund to be able to address certain imbalances in our country. Once you are in Nairobi and you drive 50 kilometers out of Nairobi, then you are in a totally different world. Because then there are certain regions that were developed at the expense of others for reasons that we will never be able to properly understand. But even when the Equalization Fund was brought, Ayub, the COG, the Council of Governors, went to court because there was a tussle between which form of government or which government has the mandate to implement equalization projects. So we had Council of Governors wanting that money to go to their to them through devolution. And the national government also wanted then to execute all the mandate beneath the Equalization Fund. So we were stuck with the Equalization Fund for more than 10 years. We couldn't move because the court froze and stayed the entire implementation of Equalization Fund. But again, Ayub, you know, there was an assumption in this country that President William Ruto cannot confront corruption. When he, a few days ago, said this is, you know, an animal that we must confront head-on, the very first people who were arrested are governors that would naturally be expected to be aligned to him. The governor for Bomet. And he kept quiet so that justice can take its course.
But he's not supposed to be even talking about it, is it?
He should be talking about the need to fight corruption.
Why would the president talk about someone arrested for corruption?
Well, naturally, even if he does not speak, naturally you would expect people to go slow, you know, both investigative and prosecutorial agencies, to go slow on people who are aligned to the president. But for Bomet governor to be arrested and spend a night...
It's not an ideal, Honorable Jared. It's how the politicians have set up and mastered that art.
Over the years.
Defense.
Yes, over
An example is you and me are buddies, then if I'm arrested, you come to my rescue. It's how we set up the... I mean, which is then an encroachment on the institutional powers granted to the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission and generally the criminal justice system. And why would the president, as a member of parliament, then form a task force that will bring all these agencies together and would be then micromanaged from State House until the suspension of the courts, yet they had the independence to do their work?
Well, we've always had those agencies. You know, you've got the DCI, you've got the EACC, you've got the recovery, the asset recovery, but there are so many. But looks like certain times there are cross-cutting issues, and therefore you do not really know which agency to pursue this. You heard about the DCI and EACC fighting between who then has the mandate to present cases to the ODPP. The ODPP was saying, this is our sole mandate. By the way, the matter went all the way to court, and the court pronounced itself that that is the work of the ODPP. So that was settled.
I have a question from Mheshimiwa.
So why he had to bring all these agencies together to also avoid duplication of roles? Because you may find an issue is being pursued by the DCI. On the other hand, EACC is also pursuing a similar matter. And by the way, the governors will tell you that EACC is literally camping into their offices, perusing files after files after files. There are certain files that will make it to the ODPP when you don't know how to speak properly, but there are those that will be killed at that stage. So the president, in his wisdom, said, to avoid duplication of responsibilities, let us merge and come up with a body, a committee, that will then pursue issues of corruption to the bitter end. And I can tell you, Ayub, that many heads are going to roll.
And one
I have a question.
Just hang on. One other entity which the president blamed for corruption was the House where you sit. And I understand in the meeting you guys had at State House, the broad-based parliamentary group meeting in Karen, you guys did not even have tea. You were disgruntled by his statements.
They went straight to debate the president's speech.
I had tea, so probably there are others who are already not interested in having tea, but I had tea. We only asked the president to provide evidence because you cannot come up with a blanket condemnation of members of parliament. Some of us here came from the religious societies to join parliament and carried the same ethos, the same behavior, the same norms with them here. And when a president comes up with a blanket condemnation of members of parliament, I am also equally affected. So we ask him,
but he actually admitted,
can you provide
he admitted
evidence?
that he gave 10 million, and he asked you guys, did you get the money? And he even promised the nation that we will not shame them, but we will arrest them. So even the president is double speaking here.
So are you
I don't think he said he gave out any money.
He said money was given out.
Yes. He said money was given. He said he had evidence that some money was given to some members of parliament to tinker with a report. That is what he said. He didn't say he's the one who gave it. But, you know, he sits at a vantage position.
He posed the question, mulipata.
No.
Play the clip.
Yeah, he did. Yeah, that he asked.
issued.
But he didn't say he's the one who gave it up.
He's never said he is not the
Yeah,
one.
but being who he is and sitting at such a vantage position with access to all the intelligence, he ought to have either mentioned the individuals or, in the alternative, take the names to the EACC for further investigations.
That's true.
Because if members of parliament, good names like mine, will be besmirched by the president, it doesn't sit very well with
Like,
Ayub, I think...
a final comment before I sample the feedback.
Yeah, I think, like, anytime somebody takes an initiative, to do something good, we will commend it. I think the president's effort, bringing a team together to fight corruption, it's something we will commend. But I think it will be best to leave it to the independent bodies to do their job and empower them. Those are the bodies that are constitutionally mandated to do those jobs. Now, I want to make a comment on what my brother Ekuru said earlier on, which is about leadership, leadership failures. For example, I come from northern Kenya. Northern Kenya has been marginalized for so many years, 50 years. And we always, say that, like we had provincial commissioners who were there, which was just a relic of the colonial administration, whose role was mainly to control natives. Then came the county governments. We elected our own leaders. We have our own budget. Nothing seems to have changed. All the resources that are going to those counties are coming back to Nairobi and developing other areas. Those resources, devolution, the way it's supposed to work is make sure that those resources stay there, create local economies, accelerate economic activity in that region, empower the youth, create employment.
Thank you.
Abubakar, just one second. There is an admission in this country by the previous regime and even this one that money is being lost daily. In fact, Uhuru Kenyatta talked of 2 billion daily. President William Ruto the other day again also commented on the same thing. So, I mean, Ayub, are we failing? Is our so-called independent, are they failing? The president also said he's a consumer of raw intelligence. So what is NIS doing about this? What is DCI doing about this? And for me, even as the president, he should be able to actually meet up with the leaders of this institution and tell them, listen, we have a problem in the country. This is the raw intelligence that I have. This is how we are losing money every day. Why aren't people not being prosecuted? It's a failure of leadership. Why? Because the same government is a corrupt government. I mean, you heard what people said that, I think it was Gachagua now spilling the beans. I mean, you're assuming this is a marriage that has broken down irretrievably. So at least we need one of the spouses to tell us who was the bad spouse in this marriage. Okay. And Gachagua, I think, is doing a very good job in telling us how the marriage failed. So saying that, for example, State House is, the epitome of corruption. This institution cannot be controlled if, for example, at the very top, like they say, fish rots from the top. Okay. And I want Mr. Gerald to come to Turkana. There's a lot of fish there. It dies out of old age.
Are they rotting?
Goes to Turkana.
Thank you. So let's sample the feedback. Let's sample the feedback, gentlemen, and sum things up here. The hashtag on next is Citizen Daybreak. Linus Gerald says the broad-based government is inclusive on paper, but in practice a bloated alliance of convenience. No one is truly accountable. MPs pocketed by the executive. It dilutes responsibility and breeds inertia rather than delivering real change. VK Ngatich says, Ayub, the common Mwananchi will always know whether the economy is improving or not. They do not need to be told in public rallies, treasury speeches, or TV shows. Anunga is not 100 bob. Its averages between around 170 bob. Bob Otieno Wino says, at broad-based at one, there is nothing to celebrate. It's all about political interest between the president and the former prime minister. Nothing is working for Kenyans, not even essential sectors like health and education. Lekishon Laban says the Raila-Ruto union is a selfish pact of convenience that's left supporters confused and betrayed. Raila once a people's fighter, now shields oppressors. Ruto's hustler chance misled many, scandals and poor service rule. Two selfish leaders, a betrayed nation. Sivandas Komondwa says one of the biggest problems we face as a country is the ignorance of the Kenyan electorate. They watch politicians shapeshift, forget, and then elect them again. Nothing will change until we as Kenyans change our mindset. Okelo Mwalimu says leaders are as good as those who elect them. During campaigns, we put a lot of pressure on aspirants to give handouts. After elections, we put extra pressure on them to solve all our problems, including funeral expenses. A corrupt society produces corrupt leaders. The second says that even those who castigate the executive for corruption shouldn't deceive you, and that they have the panacea to run away corruption or the medication. Given an opportunity, they might be worse than the current regime. Shida si wanasiasa, shida ni njaa na tamaa yetu. Gentlemen, thanks for your time. We are some minutes past the hour mark, and Dr. Ekuru Aukot, many thanks for your time. Abubakar Abdurrahman, thanks for your time. Yes, 30 seconds, Jared.
All right. Thank you
for your time in advance.
Thank you very much, Ayub. Let me say this. Kenya is turning the corner. The opposition's only hope was that our economy was going to collapse and the country was going to be in ruins. President William Ruto has come forcefully to stabilize the economy with his brother Raila Odinga, and they have so chosen to unite this country. At the end of the day, and the war of corruption has been escalated, at the end of the day, there may be nothing negative for the opposition to rely on.
Thank you. You made your point, and many thanks for your time, much appreciated. And this was the code you are looking for, Dr. Ekuru. President Kibaki the late said, education is now the most important factor of production. No country can be competitive without massive investment in education. We must therefore ensure all our children have access to quality education. This is the only way of giving them a fair chance in life in today's world. The late President Emilio Stanley.
And that's why,
thanks for your time.
And that's why the three nomads like us here can sit on the same table with a Luo man from Nyanza.
Much appreciated. And many thanks for your time, for being part of the company here on Daybreak. The hashtag on X has been Citizen Daybreak. The SMS code is 22422 at Citizen TV Kenya and at Ayub Abdikadir. Good morning.